one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Play ball.
Not this
Okay.
year.
Roll call. Jay Edwards is here. Deb Janik.
Present.
Tom Haley. We know where he is. Ruth Hollenbach. No. Jennifer Joslin.
Here.
Brendan McNally.
Here.
Jennifer Ashley.
Here.
Jerry Aker.
Here.
Mike Dakotas will not be with us. Joe Souza.
Present.
Tom Hamilton.
Here.
Okay. We have the town administrator with us yet again, and I think he's going to be with us for all of our meetings from now on, or whatever we end up doing. Chris, do you have anything new to tell us that transpired over the past 24 hours? You're muted. You're still muted.
There we go.
There you go.
Just on today's calls that the issue did come up again, especially towns that were trying to prepare their financial town meeting and town referendums, that the state is still apologizing that they have no information for us. The only thing they can try to help us with is deal with Department of Health as far as having meetings. Other than the guidance on finances, they have no information.
So no new news to help us out. Okay. And we talked last night about revenue expectations. There are none. We sort of talked about we talked with Denise Surratt about what's happening for the rest of this year and estimates of revenue for 2021. I will tell you what I did today. I talked to various department heads and we discussed what might have to happen with capital expenditures for next year. I talked to Dr. Sanchioni and Jerry Larkin at the schools, and I asked them if they had made any changes or had any new information to give us, and the answer was no. So the last budget request we received from them is the one we're going to have to use. Dr. Sanchioni did express that he was happy that he has saved money going forward in health and out of district placements and those kinds of things. And even though we haven't given it to him, he's claiming it as his. Any questions about that part of it?
Yeah, Jay, the things that he was mentioning, and it was briefly mentioned last night in terms of some insurance cost, and there would be transportation costs. That was for FY20, the current year, correct?
No. Let me find my piece. I got all this written down. Oh, I got it hidden. All right. So like I said last night, at the April 14th meeting of the school committee, it was brought out that their estimate for the upcoming year for health, their estimate that drove their request was a 3% increase. It didn't come in at 3%. It's come in at 0.5%. So I don't know what the line item is, but let's just say for argument, they estimated $2 million for health insurance. It came in 2.5% less than that. Hang on a minute, I got it. Oh, Tom's here. He must have flown to the library. So this is the kind of stuff that under normal conditions, after we had voted on a budget and it had been delivered to the town, would have ended up in the fund balance.
For the school, right?
For the school. That's kind of how that kind of thing happens.
Mhm.
Only this year, because of the way things are, they got their quote, if you will, before we've actually done the budget. Yes, Jen?
So when I watched that meeting on the 14th, I think the total savings was somewhere in the, and it wasn't just from the health insurance, there was other things. Total savings was around 400,000 or a little over that.
Well, I'm
And
going to get to
then-
that.
But
So
out of that, but they already had a $2 million deficit with what they were going to have. So it just made their deficit 1.5. It didn't put
Correct.
them in the positive.
no. So here's the deal. Their revised medical, they saved 251,126, according to what I heard at that meeting. Dental, they saved 24,000 and a couple of dollars. Out of district placement, they saved 156,183. So if you add that all up, it's $431,115 that, let's put it this way, if the budget had already been approved, then that amount would have ended up in the fund balance. And they would have used it to defer some of their deficit. Keep in mind, some of that deficit is predicated on, this is what we wanted, this is what we didn't get, that's a deficit. Am I pretty much correct on that?
I'm sorry, who's going?
No, it's Jen, go ahead. Jen Joslin.
Go ahead, Jen.
I just, when I looked at it, it wasn't all like from what they wanted. It was what their expenses were going to be. And even too with the out of place, we always talk about the out of place, out of district placing, and that's the savings this year, but we don't like all of the guessing games, we don't know what the out of placement district's going to be for next year. So you could save this 150,000 at this end, but then on the other side of it, it might be 400,000 next year.
Well,
When they're already working with a deficit. All I'm saying is, I think when we look at the school, what we've already voted on, that we need to be conservative because they're already working with a deficit. And if we pull any more, we're going to hurt them even further.
well, I did ask him a couple of questions. I did ask him, I was under the impression that they just use some of their fund balance to support fiscal year 21. But according to Dr. Sanchioni, they're at net zero in that, disregarding what happened on the 14th. So there's no money, apparently there's no money in the school fund to help out with next year beyond what they've already agreed to contribute.
Right. I remember them talking about that, saying that if they depleted every account, including what they had, they still had this deficit. And, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but on the other side of it, again, with the situation that we're in and thinking about the students with the amount of time that we now know that they're going to distance learn, we don't know what kind of challenges they are going to have in September, not only on the education side of being delayed, not maybe being at grade level and what kind of needs will need to be met, but also too, what kind of stipulations. I know the governor said today that they are hoping that some of the cleaning costs to reopen school would be covered federally through the CARES Act, but that doesn't necessarily mean all of the supplies that they may need to reopen and work efficiently without, in lieu of a vaccine, will be covered. So they may have expenses next year that we don't even know. And obviously, they're going to have to try to reopen.
Well, they're very much on top of keeping track of anything, just like all the other department heads in the town are, and earmarking them as possible COVID-19 reimbursable. Apparently, it's very complicated. And from what I understand, is it CARE? Apparently that'll go to the school direct.
There's a portion that they're talking about that would go to schools direct, but from what I understand of it, it would be for like cleaning, hand sanitizer, PPE, those types of things. but it doesn't necessarily talk about addition, like if you have to have a classroom with classroom reduction size, if you can only have 15 kids to a classroom, it's not necessarily covering any additional salaries that may be in lieu of that. Also too, a conversation has been had about kids that may have PTSD after this or other kind of emotional things that were gonna come through our school system. Those kids that, might already be having issues, but then are in the cracks. So, and then delayed learning. Or you think
I
about
would
the young,
hope. I
well,
would
you
hope.
also think about the younger students that missed, parts of kindergarten, first grade, second grade, that their disabilities or their learning issues may not have been picked up on this year, but then next year may become IEP students, which would raise their special education costs. I'm just saying that with every other department that we're going to revisit, we should be cautious with this.
Why should they be different than anybody else? I mean, everybody's going to suffer.
They already
Yes.
are.
They already are.
They already are, and there's
There's 1,800 students there, and they're the largest employer in the town.
It's 3/5 of the budget. That's the best way to look at it.
Jay,
Who was that?
I sent you a message. I guess you didn't get my chat message.
Oh, I'm sorry. I gotta get used to looking
If
at
we're not
that.
using that, I won't waste my time.
No. So it says, oh, there's a ton of them here. So what happens? Do I just click on Joe Souza now?
I just said I wanted to weigh in
Oh, go ahead.
at the appropriate time. All right, well, only that, if you remember back, the state was already in deficit before any of this happened,
315,000.
and then probably again this year. So, I mean, the state's already starting off in a deficit. And I know everybody wants to save the schools, but, let's be realistic. We're going to be in a slowdown. I mean, Rhode Island is a service industry state. I mean, restaurants and bars, it's a lot of money in this state just in service. And all those businesses are going to be down to like 1/3. I mean, revenue is going to be way down this year. So the school should be coming up with an emergency plan. I mean, we're not going to get the money. I don't care. Anybody tells me the state is not going to be able to come up with the money to fund everything. So, and the big cities like Providence, Pawtucket, Central Falls is a small city, but you know what I'm saying? The cities that have the most distressed generally are going to get the biggest pot, and we're going to get stuck with, oh, you'll have to cover it under your property taxes. So realistically, I don't understand why the school department hasn't put together like an emergency plan to deal with what they're going to be dealing with next year. I mean, if they're just waiting on us to say, okay, we're going to reduce your budget down to a 0% increase, and that's what I'm willing to do. I'll make the motion to level fund them and to cut all capital for this year and see where it goes. I mean, and I think even level funding, and we're going to see a huge increase in our taxes. That's my point. Thank you.
All right, so,
I have a question.
yes, Deb Janet.
When you talked to him and he said that they're going to save money on the health insurance and dental, that's for next year.
Yes,
For the out of district students, that is for this year, or like, I'm just wondering if that's the cost to transport them out of district. And that would be for this school year, correct?
I was deficient and I didn't clarify that, but I did talk to him about, not him, I talked to Jerry Larkin about busing. And they still don't have an answer. How that contract is structured,
Yeah.
how we pay them. I mean, he did say, well, they've laid off all their drivers, so they got to be saving a ton of money. But does that mean we do? And they don't know.
Right. So I would imagine we're saving something anyway this year. But when he talked about out of district,
That's
I'm
got to be
just
this
wondering
year.
if he implied for next year, do we have fewer students, or students with less cost going out of district.
I didn't ask him that. He didn't put it that way, but to me, it makes sense that anything we're saving in out of district has to be now because we're not
This year.
sending them.
Right.
You know, that just makes sense.
Right. But I know that there's concerns also that students who have IEPs, I can't even remember if we talked about this on this venue or if I was talking to somebody else somewhere. Students who are on IEPs and they are guaranteed, it's like a written contract that they get X number of hours of services, which some are getting some services, some are getting no services right now. So there's going to need to be some type of a makeup at some point, and how that's going to be structured, I don't know. RIDE may have to work on that, you know, with the governor, with federal funding that comes through. You know, I don't know what that'll all look like, but there is going to be some makeup that's going to have to happen next year. Jen's right. And we don't know. So we are, again, shooting in the dark because we just don't know. We don't know what the needs are going to be. We don't know what the revenue source or the revenue amount's going to be. So it's like flying that plane without any controls.
Well, to be rude and blunt, it's like we're all a one-legged man in a butt kicking contest. We just have no information. We don't know. They can't tell us. It's just so nebulous. Brendan. You're muted. There you go.
I was just going to add on to that there ought to be quite a bit of money saved from busing, both for athletics and also just the regular day-to-day busing from this year.
Oh, I agree. There should be. We just don't know.
Don't
You would
know.
hope that anything to do with sports could be cut with no impact. Stipends for coaches could be cut with no impact. If you didn't do it, you shouldn't get paid. You know, those kinds of things. Now, I'm not saying go rampant, but, you know, if we look at this stuff closely, we can knock it down a bit. And as Chris said to us yesterday, we got to be very cautious here because the state, you know, we have what they give to the town and we have what they give to the schools. And if they come down and do the wrong thing on the wrong side of that list, any budget we do can go crazy because the town will have to make up the difference for maintenance of effort, regardless of how much it is. I don't personally understand why the town can have a maintenance of effort obligation and the state doesn't. But there it is.
Jay?
If they chose to give us $300,000 less, they can do it. If they want to give us $1 million less, apparently they can do it. And then they tell us, and by the way, make up the difference.
Jay?
Go Susan.
Well, 2 points. One, you said there's really no way I mean, we're not totally in the dark. If you read the governor's reopening plan, you can see what the economy is going to be like in Rhode Island. I mean, if restaurants all the way through August, you know, are going to have 6-foot distance between tables that have like 1/3 capacity or not even open because they're too small to even do it. Right? We know revenues are going to be down. If we were to level fund, and then the state did come across with more money, the school gets it anyway. But we wouldn't be obligated to make up if they don't fund. So that was my reason. I thought maybe we should try to just reduce it to 0 and hope that the state can totally fund on. And it may, you know, and there may be money in there for what Jennifer was talking about, Ms. Jocelyn was talking about, the things that are going to happen, you know, because of the coronavirus with the distance between the students in the smaller classes. So, you know, I'm just thinking to cover the towns behind. And again, if more money comes in, we know the schools get it because it usually has strings attached to it. It says the town can't take it back in lieu of what we already spent. It's always like that. That was it.
Okay, Sherry, you had a question?
Yeah, my question was for Mr. Cotta. And it really is just, you had mentioned that you had asked the departments to stop with discretionary spending. Was that any, in their current year, is that, would you consider like the vehicles and things like that discretionary capital? I was wondering if you could clarify what discretionary was for, to you.
Some of it is capital. It's basically they need to be able to operate their mandates under their contractual agreements. So heat, light, power, salaries, contractual obligations that relates to salaries. So anything that we're under contract for, we would continue with. But we are in the process of looking at, some things that we can cut back on.
Well, that was gonna be, one of the things that I was gonna ask is, I don't know if we could, listening to what Joe was saying, is think about trying, I think one of the things I had called Tom today to try to talk to him, and he can chime in if he wants, was to ask him, how can we play with this? I asked him if he could if we were to take it on his spreadsheet and bring the numbers over and level fund and see, what the revenue that, I think he was getting in touch with Denise today to try to bring in whatever her new revenue numbers were yesterday, and then see where we are and see what it comes out to be. Because I think that that's something that we can do with Tom with that spreadsheet, since we all have it. I know I was messing with it today, and there are some things that I think we could probably play with to see, and where we are, and we can even leave the schools off until we look at everything else if we want. But one of the questions I had was, is it possible for the town, and I assume it would be the town council that would do this, but for us to ask if there's a way for us to have them reopen union negotiations to maybe see whether instead of having to like lay off or furlough people, that they try to renegotiate some of those contracts, like maybe asking them if they would not take a pay raise instead of being laid off, or and their pay raise come next year, or anything like that to save any money.
So those are items on the table now. But before we get to any issue of opening up those contracts, I want to be sure that if there are departments that are already generating the savings through vacancies and that they've made significant savings already, it's kind of unfair to ask for them to get hit twice. I mean,
No, I understand. I just was trying to look at where.
So we are looking at it. It's a matter of getting educated about where we stand today first before we go down that road. Ideally, I don't want to go down the road of furloughs and layoffs if we don't have to, but if we do, it will be on the table. But I have not broached the subject with any of the unions yet until I'm fully understand where we stand with each of those contracts, where each of the areas that we could generate savings, and then I would probably offer them to make concessions that they thought might be beneficial to us. But in the meantime, beyond just straight contracts, there are other areas that we're just trying to save out money. And while I can come up with a big chunk of it, right now, I'm going to tell you part of it's going to get pushed into next year. I'll give you an example. 250,000 of my savings comes out of reval. They're not doing anything right now, and that money is earmarked for reval, and it's got to get done by state law. But if I can save it this year so that we don't come in the red, we're going to do that. But it winds up being an expense next year. So we're going to have some balancing issues for some of these savings. If there are capital items that really have a need for, while we might defer them this year, they may be right back on the docket again for next year. So those are things that we haven't worked out yet as far as next year's go.
Right. I'm
trying to make sure we can operate and have even this year as my priority. That's the biggest issue I have to deal with immediately. But I am cognizant of what next year is as well. So those discussion points that you're just alluded to about contracts will definitely be on the table for next year as well.
Chris, I thought the reevaluation count was restricted.
It may be.
It is.
You know, there are a lot of
Which-
things that are restricted.
No, but I mean, so that would require a resolution and a vote to change.
It probably would.
Yeah, there's a few I think that we may end up having to talk about, but places where we might be able to, get some, move some money.
Okay, so let's do something
You got
here.
some hands up, Jay.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on. Who have I got first? Oh, you moved. You're over here now. Yes, Jen.
so I think in terms of resolutions, we really need to have flexibility across the board so that as the town councilors, like for this year, approach every budget, that we don't restrict money and leave it fluid, because it's going to be such a wild ride this year.
So to do that, then we would have to take every one of these resolutions and reword them to basically say, no, we don't want to do this.
Or we just take them out.
We just take them out so that,
Oh, well, that's true because
wouldn't apply.
you're right. No, yeah, you're right there because they have to be revoted upon every year. So if they're not on the ballot and you can't vote on them, then they go away. That's a good point.
Well, wouldn't that depend on what the actual resolution is for? I mean, if it's for paving, you sure wouldn't want to take paving monies and spend it on salaries. I mean, that's.
Well, for instance, okay, I don't know if you know, Chris, but last year we had two sets of resolutions, one from the town council and one from the budget committee. And some of them were kind of duplicates and just worded differently. But one here is, with right now we have a resolution that whenever a parcel is sold in the industrial park, 25% of the proceeds goes into the industrial park fund. So that's one. Another has to do with the pay-as-you-throw program. Another has to do with, let's see, the reevaluation account. Oh, so that is a resolution. So all I'm saying is, like Jennifer said, if you don't have them on the ballot to be voted upon, they automatically fail and they don't carry on into fiscal year 21.
I think a good example, Jay, is the one where we were trying to build up a capital fund. So any of the provision of the charter, anything transferred out unexpended would 25% would go to the restricted capital account.
That's number 6 for the town council, right?
Number 7 for the budget committee.
Right.
So I think that we're not gonna probably put something like that in because we don't really have the luxury of building a capital account.
All right. So, yeah. So Chris.
But I think we need to look at them each individually and see what's gonna tie the hands of the council, because they're gonna need to be moving money all over the place. So, we're just gonna need to look at that. And I agree with you, Chris, on the paving. We need to be able to have that. But what makes sense? We have to have the ones for the elections.
Yep.
We need to have money in there, but maybe we can't fund the capital one right now, and I'll have to look at some of the others, but I think we need to give the council as much flexibility going into the new year as we can.
So Chris, if you haven't read any of the resolutions?
I don't have them. I haven't seen them. I have no idea what they look like.
You interested in looking at them and seeing what you
Send
think?
them to me. I'm not gonna look at them tonight.
No, not
Unless it's
tonight,
a-
not
yeah,
tonight.
Definitely send me what you have.
Over the weekend, because then we won't fool with resolutions tonight. I mean, we know we got to do it. Yes, Jen,
Ashley.
Jen Rashley.
Well, can we hear from Chris? Where are all of the places that he would suggest we can take away expenses for next year? And then like if that way we can see, it would be a starting point.
Well, we could do that too.
Well, we can. I haven't, like I said last night, I haven't gone through them all line by line yet. And
No.
I don't, some of them, I'm not even sure how we created them. But, you know, there are a number that, you know, I'm assuming you know as
I
well,
got you.
the town council, as to how barren this budget is on the town side as it relates to staffing and any extraneous amounts of money that are out there. There's really not a lot. But, you know, obviously you have some capital issues, and I'm sure that some of those are pretty critical to the town. And I would defer, you know, a little bit to the town council on where it is, why they put them on there. I didn't go through the deliberative process of creating this budget and making the recommendations as it went before you. But I would ask them probably if they have any really high priorities as it relates to those. You know, and then it's just a matter of going through, you know, a lot of the accounts and just determining what is bare bones and what's not. You know, do you take out the OPEB? You know, there's $100,000 there. Is, you know, do you reduce the police pension by some money? You know, there are some big ticket items that you could actually make a cut to. While I'm not advocating that right now, I would really rather advocate that after I know what we're getting for revenue and to see how much money it's really going to be before you start making a bunch of cuts. I know, you know, I made that comment last night that you know, if we had to put this thing next week, I think that we would have to do that. But I'm still of the opinion that I think that we're going to wind up pushing it. But
I hope you're right. Joe Souza.
Back to the resolve. When I had talked about the money that's in the industrial park, it's a restricted fund.
Mhm.
So if we just didn't vote on it, it seems to me that would put that money kind of in limbo. I mean, it wouldn't be in the general fund or the unrestricted, or the restricted general fund. I mean, it would seem to me we would have to just move it with a resolve into the general fund. And then it would be either inserted into the budget or held for reserve. You know what I'm saying?
So you mean make a resolution to not add money to that, and then to additionally take any money that's there and make it and turn it loose?
Move it into the general fund and put it at the discretion of the council to use, you know, as they need fit. If they see shortages here and there, if they don't need to use it, fine, but just make it available to them is my point.
All right, that's a good.
And that
point.
means but that kind of means we have to move it into the budget so that it's available, if I'm not mistaken. It's got to be, you know, just like if we were taking money from the unrestricted or from the restricted side of the general fund.
All right, Jen Joslin.
I was going to go back to like where we were talking about cuts. You know, if we have to make decisions today and on Monday without kind of this getting pushed, you know, we looked over, the town side was so bare anyway. It was like a 1.5 or a 1.6% increase. Really, the only places that when I looked over that we could cut would be capital items that we push to another time. And then, you know, look and see if that's where we can create a savings, the school capital, you know, taking that away. But those are really the only things that I could see that we could even kind of discuss. The rest of it was already down to the bare bone. So I don't know, without any other information or without this getting pushed, where we would pick from.
Well, when I talked to various department heads over the past couple of days and brought this subject up, if we were to remove every bit of municipal capital, restricted capital improvement, and well, that's it, we'd come up with $600,000, 610,000, something like that. That would be it. And that would be just gutting the whole thing. So I really don't think we want to go there either. When I talked to, for instance, Chief Jones and talked to him about capital, he said he would be, he wouldn't be happy, but he could live with removing police cruisers and the police communications improvement program that he wanted. He's got a grant for that. That grant doesn't have a real close drop dead date, so it wouldn't be bad. When I talked to Rick Rogers, he wouldn't be, I mean, he wouldn't like it either, but he could give up the used truck with the plow and the four-way plows. He'd really like to keep the tag-along trailer and the dump truck, you know, so there's those kinds of things. So probably, we're not going to do resolutions tonight, but everybody should be thinking about them. But what we can do tonight is start weeding our way through this budget. Obviously, there's a bunch of things that aren't going to change. Debt service, those kinds of things, and we can start chipping away at this thing because we haven't got a lot of time.
No.
When does the council meet?
May
11th.
25th? 20,
May
oh,
11th.
no, 12th. Is it the 12th, Chris?
I think there's a public hearings on May 11th.
Or,
There are.
no, they're regular, they're going to have a regular meeting, and I thought they said something about the 12th or 13th.
I believe it's the 11th.
11th?
The 12th is a Tuesday.
Yeah.
So it's going to be after we're done.
It will be.
So
So we have to go with what
I've
we
been
have
telling
now.
everybody, I would like to have our stuff done by the 5th. If we don't, then we'll do it, come back on the 6th. And if we don't, we'll come back on the 7th. But on the 7th, we gotta, if we don't have our get out of jail free card, then we got to deliver. Yes, Brendan.
So, you know, I'm wondering, it seems to me that the big unknown for us right now is revenue.
Right.
And we started the process, and by the dates, the town council, the town administrator, town council put in their best guesses on what the revenue was going to be and expenses, and then we evaluated and we came up with a provisional budget to date. So right now we're spending time talking about, well, what could we cut? And at least I don't know, cut to what number. And right now, in terms of what we had projected originally for FY21 in terms of non-tax revenue is just under 17 million. And we spent a lot of time, I think it was last year or the year before, is trying to make estimates on what we thought was going to come in from hotel and things along those lines. But to me, to kind of say, well, let's cut the, you know, give the schools just $1, I still don't know what number we're trying to drive towards. And that what to me would be is looking at, and in particular, some of the really big ticket items on revenue and say, how confident do we think these might come in? And we can start with the biggest ones, the state and the casino gambling, and then say, you know, do we think the 3 million could be 2.5, 2, whatever that number is, and then it's going to say, okay, wow, if we're going to have $2 million less or $3 million less at our best guess at this point by May 5th of revenue, then therefore come these cuts. But to me right now, I don't know how much we're trying to cut out of the expenses without knowing what our assumptions are about revenue.
Which is what we've been saying all along. We don't,
Did you get those numbers from Denise today?
Yes. Yes, we did.
Yes, I got something from Denise, and
Yeah, I'm trying to look for it myself.
she flagged a bunch of areas that are vulnerable, but didn't change the figures. I mean, we could make a guess, but she did. There was one area that she cut 80K from
The interest account.
the interest income account, investment income account.
Did she send that out to
So,
everybody?
I think she did.
I don't know.
so $80,000 less in interest.
That's probably generous.
Probably.
I'll just quickly bring up the or attempt to bring up the spreadsheet
In front of me.
with her annotations on
Can
it.
someone forward that to me? Because I did not get it.
I'm not going to volunteer to do that because I'm having all kinds of internet problems. But I'll be happy to try to do that afterwards, after the meeting.
So the
So
white one
here's-
is the one we already had. Oh, there it is,
So-
80,000.
So there's that change that I made. And here's her, I don't have the word go with them, but here's her identification of areas that
So
that
fire
are
and
vulnerable
police.
to change. Kind of casino related, I believe she said. Yes, and then down here. State aid related. Again, she didn't make changes, but identified them as variable, likely to be variable. And then there's all of these. Again, state revenue sharing related for the most part. The last two, obviously, the gaming is the casino, figure. Chris, should we just like change that casino figure right now?
Well, yeah, I would, because I don't think you're gonna get it, but
Okay.
fight for it.
Well, they owe us 1.8, right?
No, it's 1.2 right now. We're
Oh,
short.
1.2, okay.
But I think if we're being optimistic on next year, if you're gonna put anything in for casino revenue, it should just be at least half 2 quarters. We know we're not gonna get anything in the first quarter. There's no way they're gonna be able to reopen like that. And I would bet we're gonna miss the second quarter. If we're lucky, they're gonna reopen to regular operations for the third.
So let's make a command decision here. Put that number in.
All right, half.
Are you?
But then
and,
you
know,
also need then to, well, they already reduced police and fire details and all that.
I might remind people that Trent River's been in trouble before. You know, we could see a bankruptcy over there, over this.
I wouldn't
Didn't
know
they
that,
just
too.
make an $180 million purchase on out-of-state casinos?
That doesn't matter.
Yeah,
If they,
I know, but what I'm
if they're
saying
not paying, it's totally, if they're not paying the bills here, they could be going, you know, that's why they have limited liability corporations. It doesn't all get mixed together.
Well,
So-
let's
so-
keep
So if you
one
take a look
thing.
at those two changes and see where that,
What was the other change?
the reduction in the interest. The
All
80
right, so
the
80.
That was 80,000.
Tom, I
So-
can't
so
see the
those two
spreadsheet.
Who are we
Oh,
talking
you
to?
can't?
No, I just, I lost the spreadsheet. The camera went to me and now I have Tom's face.
Oh,
Oh, I got it back.
okay. Glitch stuff. Oops.
So did it make an impact?
That should have filtered down, but apparently it didn't. Damn. Everything's going great today. That should have affected the bottom line. Let's see if it did. It did, 15.3.
I'm gonna go one further and just say, take out the sports betting revenue, because there's not gonna be any, we know that there're not gonna be a lot of sports. Like, we know we're not gonna have baseball. Football's a big if. Basketball season is not resuming, so I would take that 100 out too. That's just my theory.
Okay.
I assume that was part of, no, I see it now. I thought that was part of it.
Yeah, no, that's when they say 3.1 million, that's the 0.1.
Okay, I take that out. I agree. I take that out.
That's probably a good point.
Good on you, Jen.
And, the hotel tax, where we have the number next to it, the 3677, and then on the yellow line, we have the 18. Again, by the time we reserve, we go back into functioning mode where people are comfortable to travel and people have expendable income to spend at a hotel and a casino. I would drop that number back down to the 3667 and hope it comes in.
Let's do it.
So Brendan, earlier, you wondered what should be our target. Our
Correct.
first target has to be below the 4% cap,
Yeah.
and then do better than that.
I thought we should start with the 45,000 we are over and then start to look at how we reduce it from
Well,
there.
yeah, that's why I said in an email, that's the first thing we need to address.
I'm assuming your motor vehicle phase out's gonna, part of that's gonna go as well.
Think the whole thing,
I don't know about the whole thing. I think that,
half? Or should we be thinking like 20%?
I'd probably say 20%.
Because I keep on hearing that number bandied about.
So that's on the 332,000.
Yeah, because there's two pieces, right? There's a first one and a second one, correct?
Correct.
Where
You know
we
what
at?
lines those are?
Yeah, 49.4.
49. Oops.
No, I'm getting dizzy.
Jay, can I bring another thought while we're
Who?
scrolling through here? Have we had any conversation with Stu about rec for the summer? I don't want to jump right on the rec camp immediately because in the governor's conversation today, she said that in phase one, they were going to start to reopen childcare and that camps might still be on the table. But I'm wondering if that might be an area for some savings if they're unable to open and run rec programs for the summer. I mean, I'm hopeful for parents that they would run, but that might be an area to look at as well. If we're unable to run them due to state restrictions, we might have some savings there.
We were told,
I'm
we were
sorry.
told- we were told that there would be no events with more than 50 people, and we handle over 100 kids. So I think our guidance that's going to be coming out fairly shortly is that the summer camps are going to be off the table.
So when I was making a list earlier in the week, things that may be cut, among them are the Porta Johns. The senior center bus isn't running. Anybody that has something in their budget for travel, they're not going to be doing that. The beaches, salaries and expenses. Summer recreation was on there.
I wouldn't go so far with the beaches because there is discussion about opening the beaches.
That was in her meeting today, was she talked when, can't see anybody. When she was talking today, she talked about reopening some state parks as a part of phase one. And then some of the questions that went to her today in the question and answer portion was, did she think that beaches would be reopened? And her comments there were that yes, that was still on the table, but she thought that would be part of phase two. And phase two, if we continue on the trajectory that we're on, would be somewhere around Memorial Day. But they would have to come back with restrictions how to use the bathhouses, restrictions on how to pace out, how you would park, and that she would advise municipalities how to do that. So I would be cautious in pulling anything off, just like Chris said, for beaches and rec, if they're on the trajectory to kind of reopen those things, especially too. One of the questions was, can towns and municipalities open it to residents only? And
No,
I
you
think
can't.
you'll see different communities near us do that to residents only first. And we might want to have a plan for our residents as they're starting to come out of stay-at-home orders.
Okay, so the point's taken that the beaches may be open more than we think they are.
So to just can give you a little bit more enlightenment about those conversations, because we had a long one about it today. The plan on the beaches are when they open, Connecticut and Mass are going to open at the same time. That's what the plan is. Now, whether or not that actually happens is a whole different story, because some of the cities and towns are walking, they'd like to open earlier, but it would be limited that most of them will not allow sunbathing, towels. So you could go to the beaches to walk, basically. And they may open up the parking lots, but as they do that, they're probably going to open up the restrooms as well and charge fees. So if that happens, we're assuming that the out-of-state restrictions are going to be lifted as well. But it would be phased in. We were told it was a 3-phase plan. It would start very slow. It would migrate based on to more activity once the numbers plateaued and flattened out a little bit. And when they are very successful about not having new positive tests, that they would open up probably fully.
Okay, so we'll see.
And I don't know, I don't know how closely she's gonna follow Massachusetts, but a lot of the restaurants and stuff like that are starting to get say that their plan is to be open like by May 12th to the 18th. So, I mean, I've gotten some things from a couple local places. It sounded like some of even our restaurants here locally would could possibly be open by those, or that's the projected date right now.
And I think one thing to keep in mind though is even if she lifts where you can, the businesses have to obtain, what they're gonna come back at limited people, amount of people that they can hold. You have to space and that you have to be able to purchase PPE for your employees, which is also all going to be kind of driven because now every employer that currently hasn't had to provide PPE as people have been working from home or had limited employees in are going to now drive to try to purchase this. I know where I'm currently employed, we had difficulty and we're down to minimum staff, but I couldn't purchase gloves this week. I'm on a 2-week hold for gloves. So
there is a lot of controversy about restaurants right now because I'll tell you, a couple of the major cities have been complaining about the rollout plan. And that if they were gonna, I think the first phase is 25%, that, there's no way you can have the staff of a restaurant with the kitchen help, the utilities, gearing up for the food and the servers and serve 25% of what you would normally serve. Your chicken Parmesan will be $70 instead of 21. The economics just don't make sense. So there's a lot of pushback on this right now as to the guidance that's coming. As it relates to Massachusetts coming out earlier, my understanding is the governor of Mass still has a stay-at-home order till May 18th, and that hasn't come off the table yet.
and Connecticut
So
extended
I don't
as
think
well.
the restaurants will open until May 18th.
Well, I could tell you one thing, when I was talking, for instance, Rick Rogers today, he told me that in his efforts to acquire protective equipment and hand sanitizer and stuff like that, just recently, a gallon of hand sanitizer cost him $70.
Well,
Well, hang on, and he's trying to get, like, I don't think it's Tyvek, but some of that kind of covering stuff, and they're telling him the earliest you can get it is August. So, this stuff is just not going to be available for everybody that wants it all the time.
well, and from the glove side, when I tried to purchase gloves through our normal vendor for gloves, a case of gloves used to cost about $52. And when I called to order them, they're on back order and they're now 140.
Yeah, we're
So
not
now
taking
we're
advantage of
searching for
this.
vendors that aren't doing that. And I was lucky that the one that I have it back ordered on, they have not done that. So, there are companies out there that aren't doing it, but now you're going to have everybody at once trying to gear up. Because we're not just talking about restaurants and companies. Think about, hairdressers and all the PPE that they're going to have to buy too. Every type of business.
So Tom, where are we right now with the 4%?
Okay, here's where we are. Let me get up and running here again.
I got something beeping.
Somebody's phone's off the hook.
Somebody's phone.
Okay.
Wow.
I can't hear, but I can hear it.
Hey, that's not good.
So here we have it where we need to cut $1.8 million to get down at 4%. Right now we're at almost 9%.
We can't do it.
So to me, if I have this right, one of the things that we've done already, I think it's fruitful to kind of think about what the expenses are by discussing the revenue first, and rather than just going piecemeal jumping around. but we started and we looked at, we have $3 million that we're thinking about from the casino. And we made an educated guess to say, we don't think anything's going to happen in the first quarter. We're skeptical about the second. So we took the 3 million and we're guessing at 1.5, correct?
Okay.
Yep.
Then we went to 100 grand on sports betting, and we're like, what's going to be happening with professional sports? And so I'm asking this is, did we just kind of assume that we would get 0 for next year? It's 100,000 was pre-COVID, and then now we're putting 0.
That's what we did.
Okay. So, to me, kind of going through these, there's a number of these others. Then the motor vehicle tax, and I apologize, I heard 20% is,
Right.
so we're saying we would get 20% or we would cut it.
Cut it by 20.
Okay, cut the, this line 110.
So it would be
Okay.
that it's currently at 332,921, and we're figuring we would get 80% of that,
Okay.
right? And
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
assume that the two together, there's another one that's part of it is the 62,598, and that we'd be getting 80% of that. And we looked at the hotel tax, and there's 18,000 in there. And Jen Jocelyn was saying, wow, they're going to get hammered. We might only get the $3,600 or $3,700 from the prior year. I mean, to me, this is helpful in terms of
Right.
looking.
Well, the other thing that's going to happen is if the casino opens, it doesn't matter if it opens for one person, then the police and fire details will have to be there.
And there's so many.
Guys, I have to hop out for 1 second. I'll be back, okay? Sorry. to
Yeah, go
interrupt.
ahead. So if the place opens, then we'll get, we'll realize 100% of the casino or, the details plus what they give us for the police car that has to be there all the time, which we're not collecting any of that right now because it's actually closed. But when is it going to open?
Right. Well, if you kind of follow some logic, if part of our logic is we're saying we're only going to get half of the casino money because it's going to have a delayed opening and all, then looking at some of the money that would drive that from the police details and the fires, let's just assume we'd get half of that.
Okay.
I'm kind of more worried about some of these real bigger ticket items is that, and certainly the casino is a biggie, but then obviously we're looking at the schools, and there's $8.7 million, almost $8.8 million that we're doing. And that, do we guess that we're going to get that 100% or some percentage of that? And I don't know.
What was the question?
So I'm kind of really looking at some of the real big ticket items where if we look at the revenue estimates for the monies that we'll get for the schools, so the operation aid, the special ed, there's 3 line items which total almost 8.8 million.
So I don't see them. So
It's the revenue account numbers are 4701, 02, 0610, and
That's line 88.
all right, there we go. You just had them.
Let's see, I just passed them. Hold on.
So the first, second, and the third one. The third one is housing aid is based on capital, isn't it?
good question.
So if they do construction projects, even though they're not bonded, they get capital money?
So the 1.2, that's your guess? Is that those are capital project related?
I'm assuming that's what that is. Like I said, I wasn't here when you generated the
Those came from Denise, Tom?
okay. I'm assuming the housing aid would stay and the special ed course would probably stay because that's probably a
Federal.
different fund. I'm not sure about the operational aid. That's the one piece I don't know.
Mhm.
So hopefully those would be pretty stable.
Those should be stable, and the other ones that relate to bonds should be stable.
Yeah, so also like the OLIS library thing, that should be
Correct.
all right.
Anywhere where there are bonds involved that the state has agreed to partner with us, they are obligated to pay just as much as we are.
So they're probably safe.
Now, they
Can
might,
I ask-
they might refinance them and change them, but they're still gonna make the payments, and our obligation will be the same, whatever the new refinancing is.
Can I ask about we scrolled by it, which is why I'm thinking about it, is the revenue from the senior center. It's not a big dollar amount. I mean, it was like 13,000.
There
But-
is none.
Oh, it washes, right?
Well, no, yeah, it pretty much washes because what they take in, they give back to the town. You know, it's Janet
No,
has said many
I know.
times, almost a complete wash.
I didn't know if we should reduce that on both sides, because if they're not able to run courses, again, in the current environment we are in, we know that at least until August, you're not going to be able to congregate. And the two people that use the center are in the biggest risk pool. So will they be having any type of classes, or they'll be generating anything? I know if we wash it from the revenue side, can we reduce it on the cost side too? Still creates a zero, but it might be something to look at.
So is the lion's share of that money for meals?
No, it's from, the way it was explained to us was from
Classes.
courses that they offer, classes that they offer.
Okay.
And
So
I'll say
normally what
this,
happens,
I
they schedule
know-
the class and then people sign up, they pay. And then the town gets it, but then the instructor gets it. So it's pretty well level.
I'll say this, I know they're not running the bus right now, but
They're not.
I know, but what I'm saying is that I'd hate to see for us to, there's a lot of seniors, as I'm delivering lunches and that stuff now to them, that really count on that bus to take them to the store, to, pick them up and take them. So even if at some point they're able to get some capacity back to do, to separate them in the bus is small, so they wouldn't be able to fit many people, but even if they can get some capacity back to be able to take people to the store. I mean, obviously it may not happen for a while yet, but it's still something I don't want to, try to take everything away from them and then when they are able to get back over there, I know there's a lot of them out there that are lonely right now.
The other thing is that there's a lot of things that you could do on Zoom. So you could hire an instructor that does a Zoom class to people at home, and the instructor could charge a fee, and then people could mail in a $5 check or something. So
Well-
A lot of them don't have capability. That's what the capability.
Hang on, Joe. Joe, you have some?
When we go back to that chart where it showed that 8.95% increase after you adjusted the revenue, because picking away at little things like, what the seniors are going to be doing, it seemed to me they were talking about cutting like millions of dollars out of the budget to just get it down to 4%.
Yeah, we need to look at.
Why
the
are we
big-
talking about pennies for? I mean, we should be talking about, cutting large amounts. Each department is probably going to have to take what are we going to do? 20% cut in each department? What do we need to do to get that down to the 4%? Let's not talk about each one. Let's talk about a general number. What percentage do we need to cut each department? And then look at that, because, we're arguing about a senior bus. That's like pennies compared to the budget deficit we're looking at.
Right. But
I think that's the point Brendan was trying to make. We need to be looking at the big ticket items first.
Right, because if you look at like the operations aid and revenue, that's just under 7.5 million, and if you drop it by 5%, that's 375 grand. You know what I mean? So if we looked at that number and said, if we only got 95% of it, there's 375 grand we have less. And obviously that's tons of beach and senior center and things along. And I don't know how, and that is our problem, how to guess at these and all, but is thinking if we had any feelings that the state was going to cut back on what they were giving us for school operations aid, that's a big number. You know, whether the power plant at, you know, $800,000 a year is going to make their tax payments, probably.
Yeah, they're
So-
going to. They've been making them right along, and they just made their last, you know, the one that they owed us.
Right.
So
So
They're
there would
being
be,
appraised this year. They're under appraisal this year. So next year, I haven't heard any firm numbers on what they would be taxed next year.
Isn't the power plant's on a payment in lieu of taxes? Aren't they on an agreement?
We're on there last year. We're
Last
doing
year.
with Dave Roberts is doing an appraisal or hired a company to appraise them because we didn't have anybody, I guess, in-house with the technique. So that should be coming up soon.
right. But again, I agree to my point would be is there's one that we can have, certainly they're not shutting down because of COVID-19. And so keeping that at 100% makes a whole lot of sense to me. It's a big ticket item. And it's something that we could keep at that level.
The cell tower, that's going to get paid.
So I know I kind of define what I just said, but I think if there's some order that we want to take these, seems to make sense to me. And if it's starting with the biggest ones or just starting from the top, we kind of started from the bottom and started to work our way up.
So you've got one other piece that you could add to this that you should consider because it's been talked about quite a bit. While the CARES Act 1, 2, and 3 have been out and about, and even though there's really not a lot of guidance on the last big one where the state got 1.2 billion, there's some issue as to whether or not I know the state is talking with the federal delegations and about whether or not, to the extent that there's some excess, could they have some revenue that might be made available to the state for its loss of revenue. There's also the talk that the Senate has started discussions about doing some sort of bailout as the fourth iteration for cities and towns.
Mhm.
Now, I don't know what that number would be, but there is significant talk about it right now of being proposed and passed. I know the speaker has made some comments about it in the last few days as well. So, I just want you to put that under your feather, under your cap for a minute, and it might be some relief to some of those numbers.
Right. Well, and that to me is one of the questions I asked the other night is just being, is making sure if we have a budget that's very conservative based on significantly reduced revenue, we make cuts where you have to perhaps lay off people, do this, and have to live by that budget. And then money comes in and we're saying, oh, well, we have to live with the budget. We can't give more. Now, it sounds like for schools, if more money came in and was directed towards whatever purposes that would be, we would be able to hire people back or we would be able to spend it. So if that's our operating assumption is that any money that would come in from the CARES Act, however we got it, we could use to restore things, then that would be great. I just hate to cut budgets and then get money come in and say, well, we can't now use it because we have to live by a budget that we voted on.
So,
Well, yeah, so this is just my opinion. So we vote on a budget and we accept it and we make assumptions about what money is liable to come in. And then we get a lot more. So let's just assume that we haven't done anything about laying people off. It's all about equipment. It's all about capital and things like that. The money's going to go in the general fund. There's probably no reason why you could not reuse it for those purposes. It doesn't have to get sequestered, does it?
This is the sticky wicket again. If you don't have it as a budget expenditure, you may not be able to generate it as a revenue from the feds. In other words, you can't show that you've had a loss if you cut it. So it's again.
It's not a shortfall if you don't budget for it.
Right, and what I would assume is if we did get money, that we'd probably still have to have a special financial town referendum in order to take access of those extra funds that would come in, because they wouldn't be in this budget.
Well, let me put it another way. If, let's just say assumption, we just negated all the capital expenditures. And that got us down to 3.8%, let's just say. All right. Come August, September, October, we start getting a lot, we start getting this money that might be available. And that comes into our coffers. Are you saying then that we would not be able to use that to reinvent capital items?
My suspicion is there'll be significant strings attached to those monies that you wouldn't be able to just go out and buy capital equipment.
All right.
That you would have to reimburse for, or like if you had laid people off, or if you had salary and benefit issues, or if you cut programming. If you had programming that you just didn't execute because you didn't have the money for it, there are a number of things that I think you'd have to be able to justify why you were getting the money. Now,
Well,
it may
if we make
be
cuts, we better mean
it
it.
was for lost revenue. That's the discussion that the Senate president had a real big issue with, was reimbursing for lost revenues, but I'm not sure if they're going to put strings on this.
Jen Rashley.
So, like, it sounds like to me that it's really, we don't want to reduce our budget too much, because if funds come in, we're in trouble of, we would potentially be unlikely to access funds that we really did need.
Correct.
And so, but what happens, going back to the sticky wicket, what happens if the Fed doesn't come through and we don't alter the budget that much, and then we have a shortfall of $2 million?
And the town council would need to manage the town to meet those, what resources we have.
Well, right now, what did Denise Sorrell say last night? We have, what'd she say, $1 million available in the unrestricted reserve?
Correct. Somewhere around that. It's right about $1 million.
Somewhere in that neighborhood. So what's that? 2 months?
Not even.
Okay.
$55 million budget, and well, I don't know what you would cut it to, but let's say it's a $50 million budget. That's 52. It's 50. It's $1 million a week. That's $4 million a month.
So we still have to develop a balanced budget with best guesses, like we always do, but we have a lot more unknowns this time, and do what we can. Jennifer.
It seems like we should stick with the budget. We're close to the budget that we have, get it down to the 4%. That way, when Fed money comes in, then we've already pegged the things that we really need. Like the capital items, they are things we really need. And then if the money doesn't come in, then you deal with it. You deal with it then.
So I think I hear what you're saying. You're saying if you just continue on with the budget that you had, you were short 45,000 some dollars. You figure out where that is, you get to below your 4%, you present that budget. And if we lose revenue, you're hopeful that the federal revenue would make it up.
Yes.
Or if the federal revenue didn't, then the cuts would need to be,
Correct.
would need to be
Then,
made.
yeah,
That's an option.
then the town council has to figure out how to bring it down based on the actual.
Well, yeah, and using that rationale, a lot of the things that are in here, for instance, all the capital things, just because they're in there doesn't mean you have to buy them.
Correct.
It just means you
That's
budgeted
what I'm
for
doing
them.
now.
And
Uh-huh.
then,
No, but I mean, you budgeted for them. You would like to have them. But if you wake up in the morning and say, well, we just don't have the revenue, then you don't do it.
Right.
And then
Jen Joslin.
so you put the word out to all of your department heads to spend slowly, like be really cautious.
Well, they've been told that for this year, and I think they're gonna believe it for next year too.
And like unless something like totally breaks, use it and then like ask the town heads to put off their capital purchases until the third and fourth quarter.
That would be the way I would operate. That's.
Yeah,
Question, please.
Hang on, Jen Joslin.
So I was just wondering, like, if it would be the same thing with everything, if you, what are funded on the side, like if it's something that's not used and then or didn't happen because of COVID, like using Parks and Rec as an option, that even if we funded it, then the council would be able to move that if they needed to. Or, and like Jen said, if we fund for the capital and it comes in and we don't buy it till the third or fourth quarter, or we don't spend it at all, depending on where we end up. I think that might be a better way to go than sitting here and chopping, because too, if you don't have a shortfall, if you cut it out, it's not a shortfall, you cut it.
Okay, do we have a consensus that
No.
maybe our best, Joe?
Well, maybe I'll be outvoted, but I don't know how you're gonna put a budget forward and ignore the revenue estimates that you just received, or ignore what the governor has talked about with her plan to reopen the economy and think that somehow the state is gonna fund the way they have been in the past. I mean, this is like, we're not gonna do anything. We'll just pretend that we're doing something and hope the money comes in. Come on, think about it. We need to make some real cuts here.
So-
Reduce this budget. The way it looks right now, we're looking at what, a 9.5% increase.
Well, that's because Tom changed the revenue estimate.
But
So
yeah, to what the estimates that we were given by the by our treasurer.
no, we changed some of them ourselves right
Some of
here.
those.
No, but yeah, some of hers and some common sense that we know we're not gonna get next year. Hey,
Well-
you guys vote the way you want to. But
We don't
this-
know it, we're assuming it. So
Oh,
Joe,
yeah, well, if you're gonna assume, you should assume the West and pray for the best. But
Tom, what happens
worst.
if you put back Denise's revenue estimates?
Is he there, Tom?
Yeah, I think he's maneuvering around the screen here.
Okay.
I think we're gonna find it's what, 4.12?
Yeah, it was 45 grand.
I'm trying to take myself off mute. I figured out how. Yeah, with her estimate, all she did was cut 80K from the
Correct.
revenues. And so that, oops,
But that's a known, so that's fine.
yeah. Yeah, that, what that did was it turned the 45 into
125.
125 that we had to cut.
Okay,
basically.
so using these estimates and this rationale, we have to come up with $125,000 in cuts just to get us below 4% without taking anything more out of the unrestricted reserve.
Well, that's my point. We need to get way below 4%.
Well, okay, so let's
That's
just see
my
what we
point.
can do to get to this point right now. Because right now, we're just spinning our wheels.
Well, if we don't build redundancy into this budget, we're gonna get burned on the backside when we find out what the real revenue numbers are.
Okay, let's just get ourselves to the 4% for this moment and see what we can do.
And how much is 4% in cash?
Mhm.
Oh, it's 125. No.
No. Let me take a look. Hold on.
The cap. They're talking about the cap.
Right. How much actual money how many dollars do we need to reduce it?
Yeah, again,
That's
that's
with the 125?
that's the 120 we talked about.
Okay, okay, thank you very much.
Can I make a suggestion? can we look at the school capital? The school said to us, they would give up all the
All
capital
their
if they could have,
capital.
you know, their operating budget. So if we took out the school capital, there's 100,000 of it. If we took out the library capital request, there's 115. We're only short 10 to start.
That's what, those are the two things I think are the best to take out too.
Well, it's a good start. And
Yeah.
do we have a consensus that'd be a good idea?
Well,
Um,
one
Jennifer?
thing about the library capital, the big issue there was, I thought, to fill in the siding issues that could really develop into a bigger structural problem.
But, and the
So,
We could,
school,
the
the
library
schools had
has a
this-
fund. The
Hang on,
library
Joe.
could
Hang
pay it
on,
out of their
Joe.
fund.
Joe, let her
Alright.
finish.
I mean, when we talk about this too, the schools had the same issue. They need to have those stairs done. They need to repair that door. But we're in a situation where it's just not possible this year.
yeah, but we
Okay, listen,
also-
guys, one at a time, raise your hand. I'll recognize you, Jennifer Rashley.
we already know that the schools are going to make up at least, what was it, 430,000 between their health and their out-of-district placement costs. So maybe take it all out of the school.
Well, that was a thought, but yeah, we could do that. Because like I said at the beginning of this whole thing, things that normally would go in the fund balance, we learn about long after the budget has been voted on and passed. This year is different. Now it's up front. So yes, we could do that, and I know they wouldn't like it, but we could do it. The other thing is, I was talking to Rick Rogers today, and I had a call in to Catherine at the library because apparently they've been doing a lot of work on the outside of that building. I intend to drive by there tomorrow and take a look. For
So
those
so
of you
that
who don't,
library stuff.
for those of you who don't know, the Janet at the senior center has got a hell of a lot done. The back building has been sited, the back roofing issue has been resolved. They have the air conditioning system put in. Rick did the water line that needed to be done. So that place is cooking with gas.
She's actually saved some money on, the busing, and she's actually asked me if she could do 2 more sites this year. I have held her up on that for the moment.
Yeah, I know. She told me.
They're not happy with me, but I gotta do what I gotta do.
They're still watertight. They don't need to be done this year.
No, but I appreciate she's done a very good job. The building, the work that looks excellent. And she was just trying to do what she thought was right, and I get it.
Jay, I'd still like to weigh in on the library if I could, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
They have an endowment, they have their money, they have enough money that they can get the repairs done. They don't need the town's money to get that library in shape. That's my only point on that.
You're
And
right, they do have the fallback of the Friends has money, that they give them and they use it and they use it effectively. Yes, Deb Janik.
And we can hope also that as they investigate more with the library, that possibly some of those repairs are under warranty or, whatever funding we might be able to get from the builders. So,
Yeah,
it's
they're working
not-
on that.
It's not a done deal. It's, it's in the process, but we can keep our fingers crossed for that.
So Tom, have you got us where we need to be looking?
Let's get that up again.
So-
Here's where we are before we make the capital cuts on the school budget and all that.
So did you also say that the fire department, or the police department had a grant to do the communication upgrade?
For what, communications?
Yeah,
Yeah, you know what Chief Jones wants to do. He wants to upgrade the communications in the town to be compatible with the state. He got a big grant, so it's like what? 94,000, something like that.
correct. So
94.
would you wind up I mean, you would still have to put that in, but would you have to put in the grant money to pay for it? As a revenue?
Good question.
Probably, I mean, I don't know what his side of it is, but I would imagine that we'd have to have whatever the matching amount or whatever amount we were supposed to put in. I don't know if he's already gotten it or,
He has it. Here's the deal on that. I talked to him about this. He has a commitment for them to give him the grant.
Okay,
Apparently, though, this grant can be modified so that it doesn't have to necessarily be used for the original request. So I guess if you want more detailed information on that, Chris, you need to talk to Chief Jones.
I was just looking for a place where instead of cutting 100,000 out of the school, that you cut 50 and 50, you know, somewhere that, you know what I mean? So that it's somewhat equitable, so that you're not just picking totally all capital out of the school. And I don't know the deliberations you had earlier, so.
I think
Well,
Chris,
I'm going to tell you, I know this is chump change, but when we're looking at capital, originally the fire department wanted, what is it? They wanted one Lucas chest compression unit.
Yep.
The town council upgraded that to 2.
Okay.
So we could knock that back down to 1. I know it's not a lot, but it's there. I talked to Chief Jones. If he'd be willing to give up the police cruisers and the communication system.
That's 150 right there.
Well,
He
I
doesn't
wouldn't
want to
give it
lose
cruisers.
people, and he wants to keep his assistant chief. And
But-
he's got very good arguments on why to do that.
So
I
there,
talked to Rick Rogers. He would give up without a lot of issue, the used truck with the plow and the two 4-way plows he wanted. He really wants to keep the tag along, and he really wants to keep the dump truck.
so on the police, as it relates to the deputy chief, is that may already be contractual?
It's not.
No,
Oh, okay.
He's not part of the
We
union.
used to have a deputy chief, and then that went away. He's got a guy within his department that he wants to promote. And part of his deal was he would give up
Okay.
hiring a new officer to accommodate having that position. He wants him because it wouldn't be a union position, and it would,
So when you
if
say.
he
new
drops
officer-
tomorrow, we don't have a chief.
So when you say a new officer, you're talking about a vacant, not adding a new staffer to the,
Right, right now he's vacant 4,
okay.
and
all right.
he sees 2 more coming very quickly.
So I know we just hired one this week.
Yeah, but
Just came out of the academy.
I
Are you
think
able to-
everybody on this committee has heard before, Chief Jones's problem is he can't just hire somebody. He has to hire them. He has to put them through the police academy
Right.
twice, meets twice a year. And that takes time. Half of them don't, they bail out early.
All right.
There's all kinds of problems with that.
Well,
So it'd probably be 18 months before we get any new officers.
I was
Can I
just trying to
just
be
say-
somewhat
can
fair
I-
to the schools, that's all.
Can I just say about that communication system?
Yep.
When Chief Jones originally came to us, that communication system was much, much more expensive.
Mhm.
And when he met with the council, by that point, he had gotten that grant,
Right.
right? The wording for the grant. So they cut the cost of it. So what is in that budget is what we'd be paying. I don't think the grant is reflected anywhere. I think
Okay.
they just subtracted the grant and put the total, the balance into the budget. So it cut their line item and it cut their overall budget.
All right, I just heard Jay say that he thought that the chief said that there was money in a grant to pay for that.
Yeah, and it will be there for a while. It doesn't have a drop dead date real
Okay.
soon.
But I don't think it's gonna negate any of the money that's in that budget request right now.
But the 100,000 is our match, or,
I believe so.
okay.
so we'll still end up having to pay that because it was what we needed. That's really what they wanted to do, is get us upgraded so we'd be able to be with the state, right?
I'll talk to him about that, but
Yeah,
I
will you do that?
know that like police cruisers, in all the years that I did it, we always had them on a schedule of 223, 223, 223, and every once in a while they'd have one get crashed, but it made sense because you were on, it was kind of like a time payment. You get rid of these 2, you're gonna pay for it somewhere down the road.
Well, he did a grant on that and got a hell of a good deal this past year on cruisers. Got what, 2 or 3?
I think
Was
he
it
got
3
3 cars
SUVs?
last year, this year, right?
And he got the senior center bus.
Okay.
So Chief Jones is real good at getting grants.
So the other thing, Chris, was that Chief Jones did talk with the new fire chief, Chief Malo,
Yeah.
about that communication system, because it's some kind of a combined shared system. And so they talked about it together, and it was to be used for both departments.
Okay.
That's true. And they were going to give the cast off to Public Works.
That was their radios, yep.
So
Okay.
what have we done?
So
Oh,
let me tell you what I've done. Oh, can you hear me?
you've made me dizzy.
Let's see. Yeah, okay.
Uh,
Let me just say I screwed around loosely based, I think, on what you were saying. What did I do? All right, I zeroed the used truck with plow and attachments.
Yep.
I didn't touch the public safety communications, but I did get rid of the 50K for cruisers.
Oh, you cut the the 2 snow plows in half, right?
I did not cut that in half. No.
Oh, I thought you did.
All right. Let's see that. Isn't that? No,
No,
no.
you're-
I zeroed the plows. The used.
Yeah, go up a little higher.
plows. All right. Let's go.
Okay,
Let's start over
so-
again. Used truck with plow and attachments. I zeroed. Shit.
Well,
Is
you
that-
also, okay, here's what you did. You zeroed okay.
So you were saying that he would go down to 1 4-way plow? Or
Well, we
do-
could, we could do that. He wanted 2, we give 1. If you go
Okay,
down to, if you go down number 47 here,
Okay.
Lucas chest compression, you could cut that in half.
Yeah, I calculated that. I did something else somewhere that was wrong. So,
Okay,
okay, we'll have that.
that'll give us the chief's request, which had been boosted by the town council, if I remember right.
Right.
Laptops and software, if you recall, part of that was so that the police could show up at the school without having to go in, connect to their security system and find out what's going on,
Yep.
among other things.
One of the other things.
DPW, what did Rick say about DPW? I don't remember.
So I based on Chris's suggestion, I only cut the school department capital requests in half. Made
Okay.
it 50K instead of zeroing it out. And here's a mistake I made. I'll quickly correct.
Oh, that we have to do that one, yeah.
Yeah.
It can't go away.
All right. And, all
Jay,
right. So
I
let's.
know you're there, Jen. Hang on a second.
So let's just see where that takes us. That takes us to 3.89%.
Okay.
So we're under the minimum anyway by about 40K.
And that's taken into account the changes that Denise just made.
Yes, that's with the 80K that
All right,
she took away in revenue.
so that's
So-
useful.
So there we made it.
So what does that do when we go down to the estimated levy?
Okay.
$3.4.
Wait a minute. The levy itself.
1633 calculated,
Right.
which, that's it's going to be what it is. I mean, it would be nice if it was level or less, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to double check these numbers to make sure they're calculating right, but,
Okay, Jen Joslin?
So I just wanted to mention, the same person that I had messaged about the question about the library Wi-Fi information earlier tonight.
Mhm.
She's watching the meeting and she just wanted me to share that the money that's received from the Friends of the Library goes to programs. It's restricted. So they can't use that for repairs for the building.
So what they would have to use would have to be at what's that other fund they have?
Endowment.
The endowment.
And she says they are working on a building endowment, but it's just, they're working on it. They don't.
Right.
It doesn't have much cash.
Correct.
No, so if
So I
they
just
took
wanted
money
to
out of
share
the,
that from the library side.
who are you talking to, by the way?
I had messaged Pam Polly, who's on the board, to see if we could
Okay.
use the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And she had messaged me back that how to use that, but she's watching the meeting and she just wanted to share those two things as we were discussing the library, that those funds are restricted to programs and can't be used to repair the building.
So what they're saying is the money was raised for programs. It has to be used for programs.
Right.
Correct.
There's two separate fundraising. See,
And
that's
they're
just it.
working to raise money for the building, but they don't have enough yet to do that.
Well,
Yeah, I know they want to boost their
seems to me they
endowment.
need
They
to put a
keep
little more
on taking
emphasis
it
on
out.
it.
But we didn't touch it anyhow.
No, I know. The topic had come up.
Okay.
So I have a question. If we're at 3.89%,
Oh, Ruth Hollenbach's here.
if we're at 3.89%, does that give us enough room in the budget to add back one of the police cruisers so that we keep upgrading those in a more systematic way?
Well, I guess we could do whatever we want if you want to get to exactly 4%. I treat 4% as something we cannot exceed, not necessarily something we want to touch.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will tell you that in my conversations with Rick this morning, one of the bulldozers broken, and we know what that cost. It's going to cost them $1,000 just to transport the thing to get it fixed. One of their trucks is broken. So they're going to be, I don't know what more they're going to need. Chris will probably find out.
Both bulldozers need to be fixed.
Oh, both? Well, yeah, both
Gotta do
need,
one
but
first so we can use the spare when he takes the other one out.
yeah.
But that will be taken care of this year.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it will, but
Oh, good. Okay.
those bulldozers need a lot of work all the time. Jen, you got your hand up?
And no, I was just
Smoothing your hair?
stressing my head.
I've had my hand up a couple times, but
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm not ignoring you. I just,
I thought you must be. No, the only thing I'm gonna say is I still think, that if there's places, I know cutting is not popular, but that's pretty high. And I think that it's just because if we don't, I don't like the idea of dumping it all, a lot of it on the town council's lap. I just think if we can cut a little bit more, that we should try, but that's my opinion.
I have to agree. We need to cut a lot more.
I think that the municipal side, there's not a lot to cut. I think we were bare bones.
I agree with that.
Well, if you look in, under where?
And we still don't even know, we're not even sure that that's the revenue.
Chris,
So,
is the harbor master going to be doing his full job?
Yeah, they just don't start until probably another couple of weeks. But yeah, he's gotten his bills out. We've got our mooring fees in, and that they will be operational because they are actually going to have to monitor what's going on to make sure that we don't have transient out-of-state people here.
Okay,
That was
I
one of-
noticed we received a lot of the revenue for moorings.
Yeah, that happens every spring now. They send them out in the spring and they collect most of them right away.
Yeah, that seemed to be that way. I looked at it, I said, wow.
That was one of the first items I saw in the revenues that hadn't come in so I called them and inquired, and they were already out the door, and some of them were sitting on his desk as the first wave of collections.
Exactly.
and we really want to keep that dock in that they had proposed, because that is where we're going to moor some of our boats, his being one of them. And it's going to save us on the mooring fees that we're currently paying, or the
Is that the-
docking fees.
Is that the dock at the abutment?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's that water, is that the waterfront one?
Yeah, they're
Yes.
currently at Standish, and if we put the town one back near the abutment, then we don't have to pay slip fees.
Yeah, and Rick Rogers has the aluminum dock sitting in his backyard at the DPW.
Well, I get a little concerned about that because there's nobody there to watch it other than, I'm not sure if the camera actually
Oh,
points.
it's in the bushes. I don't think, you'd have to look hard to find the darn thing. Jennifer Rashley?
I'm just thinking, one expense we need to talk to Nancy Mello about is what is the election going to cost? Especially if it has to be done by mail.
I would say that she is woefully short.
I will,
In stature, I mean.
And so do we need to cut more? Do we need to find more cuts so that we make sure we have enough to hold?
well, let me tell you this. I talked to Nancy about this. So, number one, we don't have any clue on how the financial town hearing will be done or can be done. If we have to do mail-in ballots for the FTR, her normal procedure is to have printed up and ready to go about 3,500 ballots. Now how many voters do we have in town? She has to send one to everybody.
11,000?
And she said, 12 or 13,000.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So let's say it's 12,000 ballots. Now we got to print 12,000 ballots. We have to postage 12,000 ballots. She's bandying about, I don't know if this is right, a number like 70 grand.
Yeah.
Would any of that come under the CARES Act because it's part of COVID?
Who knows?
We've asked that question. We haven't got an answer on it, but I've asked that question about a number of things.
We don't know. So, it depends. If we have to do it that way, then we're going to incur that expense. And if we don't, obviously we won't. Joe?
Well, first, I think we're kind of jumping the gun because, if they can run, 4,000 people through Walmart on a Saturday to go shopping, I think we can have an election, even if we're spaced out across the high school parking lot. So I think we could have an election if I don't think we need to mail out all those ballots. There's got to be a way we can just, distance everybody out, maybe bring people in at different times, hold the election over a couple of days and split the alphabet. We could have a multi-day election and still have people request a mail-in ballot.
Well, she
That's
did
all
make
stuff the
that
council,
point.
or they need to get on now and make sure. But we could have an election. I just don't believe that we can't have that election.
No, I'm not saying we can't. She did bring that up, that maybe we'd have to do it just like you're saying. But like I said, we don't know. There's so many things we don't know. But as long as we don't get crazy with the unrestricted reserve, you know, things like that, we could pay for.
So the other issue that she brought up is, and it's out of her control, is the State Board of Elections may make the presidential primary in September a mail ballot,
Good.
which could cost her a boatload of money. But
Yeah,
that,
so-
we've asked whether or not the CARES Act would pay this, the differential on that because it's outside the norm. But we've been asking the questions. It's, nobody can quite give us the answers that we want to hear, or at least quickly enough so that we can make decisions.
Which is why we're all hoping, and we've all said it, and we've all heard it many times, that this whole thing gets pushed again. But like I've also said equally many times, we can't assume that'll happen, and we have to press on.
Correct.
Sherry Aker.
Just for something for people to think about, I think another way that will put money in, that money will make some more money available is if we do drop that resolution number 12, at least temporarily, because we can always change it back later to 0 and for the open space because they have so much
What does
money.
resolution 12 say?
Hold on, I can read
Is
it
that
to
the
you.
one I sent you?
Yeah, I got all of them, but yeah, but I had sent you something, then you sent me something. I think we were.
Stamp tax,
Huh?
something to do with stamp tax or conveyance tax?
No, this is open space. It's a percentage of money that goes into the open space.
Okay.
Hold on, I'm gonna read it to you if I can.
No, you don't have to. Listen, Sherry. We used to have that, if you recall. Last year, we got rid of it. I was going to suggest that we redo it. Resolution 12 doesn't exist. So you can ignore it.
So you're saying that what Mike Dakota sent out the other day, there's only 8 resolutions. I was
Right.
wondering what happened. And
There's
only
2
8 were
parts. There's one
adopted.
that says town council resolutions, and there's one that says budget committee resolutions. Those were approved at the last FPR.
Right. But I still am not sure how, I'll look and see. It seems, I thought that actually was, when I'm looking at the final. No, you're right. I mean, well, I'll say this, it only goes, let me just check.
There's 6 on one page and 8 on the other.
I have what you have too, Sherry. I don't know where we got it, but I have it stapled where
Yeah.
there's 12
Okay.
and the
I can
12th
tell
one is
you-
the open space. I don't know when we got that or where I pulled it from, but that's why I've been following you because I have it too.
Okay,
that's
here's
not
what
the one that
happened.
Mike
Here's what
sent.
happened, just so everybody knows. I copied and tried to put on one page all the resolutions. Remember from last year that some of the town council ones got passed, some didn't. Some of the budget committee ones got passed, some didn't. It turns out that if the budget committee and the town council put in an identical one, then ours is the one that becomes the rule. Added myself, number 12. I thought we could consider it. Based on what is going on now, we can't. We used to have that resolution for many years. Last year, we did away with it, and I was trying to bring it back.
Okay.
So ignore resolution 12.
We should only be working on the 2 that have the town's council 6 and the budget committee 8.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So open spaces is not getting, there is no money going into, there's not a percentage going into the open space fund.
At the current time, there is not. Everybody good with that?
Mhm.
I'm sorry,
Maybe.
we won't even go into why I think it's a good idea to have the open space thing, but
I,
at this budget year, it's not going to fly. Yes, Jennifer.
I'd like to just revisit again the issue of voting. I think one of the most important things we can do is to protect our franchise. We want to make sure we can vote and that we have money to vote. And if thinking in line in terms of as we've discussed, putting the money in to budget for everything we need so that wherever shortfalls are, we might be better off getting money reimbursed from the Fed for the COVID, the CARES Act. I think it would be prudent to put more money into the voting part of the budget. I'm sorry, not saying that well.
Well, let me ask you a question. If there is a shortage within that fund, for instance, let's just say, for instance, if you've read the charter, there's always the possibility of having a special referendum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's just say that a group got enough signatures in the middle of the year to do that. And if it's not within 6 months, the town council doesn't have to approve it. And we have that happen. Probably we wouldn't have the money in that restricted account to cover it. So what would happen? Nancy Mello would go to the town council and says, give me some money. And they would take it on out of they would find it, if nowhere else, the unrestricted reserve. All right, so now this year, if we attempt to, like you said, add money to everything that we think we might need it in, we're going to go so far over the cap that you won't even see it in the rearview mirror. So we put money in that we expect it to cost. And then if it goes over that, she will go to the town council and ask for some money. And as long as we haven't drained the unrestricted reserve, that's why I think we should leave it alone. The money will be there at least. But I don't think, if we intelligently, like we have been year after year, put what we think is the correct amount of money in there and circumstances change that, I don't think that alone is going to preclude us from getting reimbursed if they even allow us to collect for that. So what I'm saying is we don't have to, as long as we meet 100% of expectations, we've done our job. But if we cut it back down to 20%, knowing that it's going to be 40, well, then you got a case. Am I making that, is that making sense?
Yeah, I don't think I made my point very well.
Okay, did I make mine?
The most important thing all of us can do is make sure that our right to vote is protected.
It's not going to go away, Jen.
They will fund it.
They'll fund it.
Before they fund other things, they have to.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll get funded. We're going to do it. We'll have to do it.
Okay, I'm just thinking if we, if the cost goes up by 1 or 2 or 300% because it becomes a mail-in vote, do we want to double the amount of money we have in there now?
Do you know it's going to be a mail-in vote?
No, I don't.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to make. If we assume every bad thing and try to budget for that every bad thing, we're gonna dig a hole. So like you said, what you said earlier, what we're doing now, let's start with getting ourselves at or below 4% and work from there. Well, we've done that so far. So let's not go the other direction now.
Okay.
Does everybody agree with that concept?
Yeah.
Pretty much. Okay, don't let me bully this meeting.
I agree.
Jay, just a point, we need to vote on those changes. Like we got it under the 4%.
We're not
but
voting until the 5th.
Mhm.
And remember why I told you I don't want to do, the reason I want to do it that way. I would rather not have us have a bunch of documents that we voted on and then keep on changing them.
So in terms of the minutes, do we want to indicate that all of the things we reviewed are the things that we are considering reducing on the 5th?
Say that again.
Yeah, just a line item of the things that we've discussed. We haven't
Do-
voted on them, but that it's clear that here are the 5 or 7 things that we just talked about, almost all in the capital areas, which ones they were that we would bring
Yeah.
them to.
Do we want to, isn't it smart to capture in our minutes for tonight these items that we see would be useful to reduce and to vote upon for the 5th?
Well, could we do this? Is there any reason why we can't just vote on the entire budget on the 5th as amended? Without doing each individual item, you know, and taking all that time? We voted on the whole thing once. We voted to revisit. We're doing that.
Mhm.
So is there any good reason why we couldn't just say on the 5th, okay, we're going to vote on the budget docket as amended
Mhm.
and go from there? And we could just just say at the bottom, okay, this much for capital, this much for municipal operations, this much for school, and this is the total.
And of course, we could always just go down through all the line items we changed. at that
Or
time.
we could do that too. It just takes a lot more time.
Yeah, it'll be just a handful.
I'm sorry?
It'll be just a handful of things.
Okay, so we can do that too. Well, what's the consensus? What do you guys want to do?
I just have a question. Then what
Who?
are we doing on the 4th?
Nothing.
Like
We're taking a day off.
We're
Oh,
not
wait a
having
minute.
a
No,
meeting on the 4th?
no, the 4th is going to be resolutions. For sure.
Well, we,
Mhm.
okay.
Do those.
I mean, you know, we got to go over all the resolutions and, you know, there seems to be a consensus. Are we going to change them or are we just going to rubber stamp them
Or get rid of them.
or get rid of them? I'm going to ask,
I think there may need, at least for me, I think we just need to look at them and make sure we, you know,
Yeah.
it may be that we want to, you know, think about adding some, or because to make sure that there's a few that I just kind of need to look at it, but there, I should say there, I don't know about rubber stamping them. There may be other ones that I might want to add or that I may want to discuss with everybody about adding to make sure that some accounts, you know, that money doesn't get taken. There are things that I was thinking about cutting, I guess, that and are moving some money. I was thinking about a resolution to be able to make sure, like, to put in that the plowing account for next year, to make sure that money doesn't roll over into the general fund, so that we make sure that we keep that for plowing for next year. If we're not going to add, you know, so I was thinking about not adding money to plowing for this year, rolling over what's in there already since we didn't use it this year. And I think we didn't do anything with paving, so
Pavement will be gone.
I think that was really the only one that I was, you know, I think I wrote that down because I was thinking about, you know, talking when we were looking at reductions, since we had that money that didn't get used this year, like keeping it and not adding any for this year and rolling that over. Does that make sense?
Sherry.
Yeah.
The only issue with that is when we put the money that wasn't used this year for plowing is automatically gonna go into the
general fund.
because it's off of last year. So if you put a resolution
if
in
we-
to restrict
yeah,
the plowing, it's for
that's
the
a
next
resolve.
fiscal year.
Right.
It's for the 2021. You wouldn't be saving that money and holding it on to for the 21 year. You'd be, do you know what I mean? Because that was already, it wasn't a resolution last year.
Okay, well, look, everybody needs to read the resolutions. The town council has not, I've been after Trish to tell me if the town council is going to present any resolutions, and I'm getting nowhere with that. So I don't know if they're going to have any of their own or not. But we always have ours. So you need to go through them and see what you think.
Do you have the ones about the treasurer, like the 500,000 and there was some.
No, that's part of the charter. That's part of the charter.
Okay.
Charter says the treasurer can borrow $500,000 with the approval of the town council. For a
I
good
just
reason.
remember like 3 or 4 that used to be every year.
Jay,
I'm sorry? Chris?
I just remember there were like 3 or 4 that was standard every year that had nothing to
Pretty
do with
much.
the budget committee or.
Yeah, pretty much. Joe?
I'd like to know, we probably, Chris may know, but if we unrestrict the fund for the industrial park, that doesn't automatically put it as, available revenue, does it?
I'm not sure what you say by unrestrict. I know it's in the capital. So it is.
Well, no, it's
It's a
in a,
restricted account.
it's a restricted account just for doing infrastructure work in the industrial park. It was proceeds from sales. We had resolves that put 25% of the proceeds of sales into that fund, and it's grown up pretty good size. And I'm thinking we can use some of that money this
Yep.
year to offset
Very good.
taxes.
No, I don't think you can do that because of the way that money's been resolved to stay there. You
No.
can't
That's a-
unresolve it. I don't
No, we
think.
have to do it every year, just like every other
Yeah.
resolve.
That's when you do it
We
every year.
continue to
it's for-
restrict it.
When you do it every year, it's for the new sales. It's not to take the restriction off the monies, I don't think.
That's what I have to find out. And the question came up earlier. If we do away with a resolution and it doesn't get
Yeah. It
reaffected,
doesn't,
if you will. then
resolutions
does the-
don't roll over year to year. That's what we just found out. That's why you were talking about redoing the resolve that you were talking about, number 12. They don't just roll over every year. We restrict that money again every year, just like the account for the, all right. No.
Yeah.
You
No,
know
I
what
think
I'm
you're,
saying.
Joe, I think you're right. I'm looking at the town council resolution for that, the last sentence in it, and this is what passed, the one that we're living with now, says the funds remaining in this restricted account at the end of June 30th, 2019 shall be carried over into the same account for fiscal year 2020.
Yeah.
So it does have language prior to that to talk about if there's savings that we have, that 25% will go into it. But it does appear in the resolve that it says that this account will remain restricted going into the new year.
Well,
Well, that's the question I have to ask and get resolved. If we do not revote a resolution, if it doesn't end up on the ballot.
I'll ask the town clerk.
Yeah, so what happens to the money that's already in there?
my only other point's gonna be that I think if we come in with a budget's too high, we're just asking for a petitioner's budget. And then I'm gonna have to listen to Chris scream for a whole year about the petitioner's budget.
I'm not
Didn't
here
give
for a
enough
whole year,
money.
dude.
Peter Sanchioni and I had a conversation about this today. I mean, there's no doubt that there's going to be, I don't think there's any doubt there's going to be a petitioner's budget. And it doesn't scare me one way or the other.
Well, it could be 3 then. It could be 3 budgets. You never
Who
know.
knows? Who knows what it'll be? It'll be what it'll be. But we can't let that be driving us or,
Well, I think we should let it drive us because I think that'd be the will of the people, is to meet something in the middle. I mean, we had agreed that a 2% increase was palatable. I think even in, and I still think we should try to, get to that 2%. That's just my opinion.
I think we're going to be in the middle anyway.
I thought we were just at 3.9 on the town side.
Yeah, 3.85, whatever it is. All right, so like I said, next week the 4th, we definitely have to get to resolve the resolutions and get them settled. And like Jennifer wants to do, we'll highlight the things that have been changed. Tom's done that. And we can vote on them, get them out of the way, then do a final vote on the entire, well, we won't do the final vote on the entire budget. That'll be the 5th. The 5th, we can vote, well, we can vote on the resolutions on the 4th if we get it out of the way. And then the tax levy worksheet and all that, we'll do that on the 5th, hopefully, if we can get it done. If not, we'll do it on the 6th. And I'll turn in if you vote me the authority to do it, I will carry the whole thing down to the town hall and get it stamped. And hopefully between the time I leave my door and the time I see Nancy Mello, we'll get saved. Yes, Chris.
Tom, a question for Tom Haley. On your spreadsheet on the levy, does it break out by the percentage increase for what would be the municipal side and a percentage for the town side, school side? Does it break out what the differences as far as relates to the increases?
Let's see. Yeah, that's no, we have no percentage calculations on that. But I could add that. You're talking year over year?
I think when they do the levy notice, I think you have to segregate the two, that part of the levy is for education and part of it is for municipal services. But I'll double check on the notice you have to put with the state municipal office of finance. I think that has to be broken out somehow.
Oh, okay. I did not realize that. So I'll hopefully be talking with you on that.
Brandon, did we do that? Because I'm looking at the tax levy sheet from last year, the current year, and it's not given us, it's given us proposed school, proposed municipal, proposed capital. Oh, on the right-hand side, it is given a percentage year over year increase.
Oh, okay.
So for instance, fiscal year 20 proposed school expenses through 31.5 million, and it's a 4% increase over year over year.
I see.
And then municipal was 21 million and change, and that was a 0.8% increase. Capital expenses was a 375% increase, but that was just because of the way they did it.
Yep.
And then, yeah, so yeah, Chris, you're right. It is in there.
Yeah, okay. It's in the comments. I will make sure those are correct at the last minute.
Because that's going to be an important piece to do the advertising with the levy for municipal affairs.
So did everybody know Ruth joined us?
Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Ruth.
Better late than never, right?
Hi, Ruth. Our internet's down. I
Both
don't know
of
how
you?
you got on. I'm doing a hotspot on my phone.
All right, so what else? Hang on. Well, we have no minutes to approve. We got that done last night. Okay, so as everybody knows, then our next meeting is on the 4th, 6 o'clock. You should all have the Zoom thing I sent. And the one after that's on the 5th, same thing. So anybody have any recommendations, comments?
I just have a question.
Yep.
Do we have to approve minutes for yesterday, today, and the 4th?
Well, I asked about that,
On the
and Nancy Mello said what has happened in the past, and I don't remember this, was we did it at the FTR. Or at the, not the FTR, the hearing.
Right.
Oh,
At the,
okay,
yep.
okay.
So I don't remember doing it. Maybe I was asleep because I was at all of them. But yeah, so I asked her, I said, how the hell do we do this? And that's what she said. Am I right, Brendan? Is that?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Remember it?
There's usually a couple of weeks in between when we submit and then when the hearing is. So there's time to get those minutes done. And
All
they're
right,
pretty,
so
they're pretty simple. Mhm.
I'll make sure I stay on top of that one. Anything else? Any other?
Cover
No.
everything on your agenda?
I'm sorry?
You cover everything on your agenda?
Yeah, we did. Let's see, make sure we talked to you about expectations. We talked about the revenue. We talked about changes on the docket. We talked about resolutions, which we know we're going to deal with them next meeting. We talked about and illustrated some of the things on the levy worksheet, and we're going to deal with them next meeting.
Okay.
And anything that carries over, we'll do on the 5th, and we'll vote on the 5th on the whole thing. Yes, Sherry,
Motion to adjourn.
that a girl.
Second,
All those not in favor? All those in favor?
Okay, thank you.
I thought I tricked
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
thank you
Chris.
for
Have a good night.
joining us,
Chris.
Chris.